the takeoff roll, the first of our 3 aircraft, courtesy of the Planes of Fame Museum. The General Motors TBM Avenger, Navy torpedo bomber of World War II, followed by the Douglas SBD Douglas and the Grumman F-8F aircraft. Earlier you saw the 2 Mustangs and the P-63 King Cobra. These aircraft brought to us by with World War II aviation history, December 7th, 1941 was the surprise attack by the Imperial forces of the Japanese Air Force and Navy on the naval installation of the United States in Pearl Harbor. That got the United States into World War II. At that particular time, the United States began gearing up for what would turn out to be, for the U.S. at least, about a 3.5-year-long war. As part of that building process, aircraft and armament industries kicked into high gear, working 24 hours a day to produce the aircraft and the armament to take the war back to Japan. On December the 8th, 1941, the very first Grumman Avenger aircraft, the airplane that was flying directly overhead, rolled off the assembly line at Grumman's facility in New York. Because it was the day after Pearl Harbor, the name Avenger was given to this aircraft. The airplane you're seeing flying today, the TBM-3, is licensed built by the General Motors Corporation. So once again, when the United States kicked into gear to build up their armament in both ground and air forces, all of the companies in the United States stopped what they were building, to include many of the motor companies. Ford Motor Company, General Motors, all began building aircraft for license from all of the aircraft manufacturers to increase aircraft production as quickly as possible. The Grumman TBM-3 Avenger is a carrier-based torpedo bomber. It's crewed by 3, the pilot flying up in the front of the cockpit, a gunner and radio operator who sits in the rear and mans the machine gun in the rear, ball turret, and down below in the rear, the navigator and the torpedo man. The torpedo is carried in the belly of the aircraft, and the airplane would fly at very low altitudes over the water, dropping the torpedo with the hopes of sinking an enemy ship. The Douglas SBD Douglas, a product of Ed Heinemann and all of his engineers at the Douglas Aircraft Corporation, was a dive bomber that saw action in the beginning days of World War II. Dive bombing was the art of an aerial attack on a ground or a seaborne target from altitude, with the SBD Douglas representing one of the finest of the dive bombers. The bomb was located on a hook that was on the belly of the aircraft. The airplane could dive at an almost 80-degree angle straight towards the water. Special flaps on the back of the wings were deployed with holes drilled in there to keep the airspeed of the aircraft steady in its design. It was an incredibly demanding and dangerous job. Dive bombing was very risky, because not only did the pilot have to navigate anti-aircraft fire from the ships below, but also had to keep their eyes glued on the target. Beginning at an altitude of about 9,000 feet, the dive bomber pilot would point the nose down, let the airplane straight down, deploy the flaps, and then at about 2,000 feet above the target, who put the bomb on it would deploy, swinging the bomb underneath the propeller arc of the aircraft and hopefully hitting its target. During the Battle of Midway, May of 1942, between the Grumman Avengers and the Douglas Douglases and the numerous fighter aircraft, the United States Navy and Marine Corps sank 4 of the Imperial Japanese Navy's most prized aircraft in Korea. If any of you have seen the Glenn Powell movie Devotion, which stars Glenn Powell and it talks about the relationship between two naval aviators during the Korean War era, you'll see some wonderful footage of the F-8F Bearcat in that movie. The Bearcat is powered by features about the Planes of Fame Bearcat, this particular airplane, is at the end of World War II, two of these aircraft were built for civilian purposes. One of them went to a pilot of the Gulf Oil Corporation named Alfred Williams. He was a major in the Marine Corps. He was also the Gulf Oil Company's corporate pilot and airshow demonstration pilot. The aircraft that he flew, the Grumman Golf Hawk 4, which was painted orange with red and black trim, was flown on the airshow circuit for many years, but the airplane was eventually damaged in a landing accident and retired from service. The Planes of Fame Museum had the opportunity to obtain the fuselage from that original Golf Hawk 4 aircraft and combine it with the wings of another Grumman Bearcat and restore the aircraft into the configuration that you are seeing the aircraft fly in today. From your right, the TBM-3, the General Motors Avenger. Coming in next, the Grumman F-8F Bearcat. You see at the Planes of Fame Museum in Chino, California, the Douglas SVD Dauntless Dive Bomber. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for our pilots today from the Planes of Fame Museum in Chino, California. Flying the Douglas Dauntless today is John Kirpa in the TBM, is Garen Swagger, and the F-8F Bearcat from Chino is John Hinton. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, from your airshow right, the General Motors TBM-3 Avenger. John Kirby at the controls. The Grumman F-8F Bearcat with John Hinton flying her today. Museum for their contribution in representing Army Air Corps aviation history, and to the Planes of Fame Museum on his takeoff roll. The first of our military jet demonstrations here today, and a very beautiful and graceful performance that we're going to watch momentarily. Altitude in this magnificently restored Korean War vintage Lockheed T-33, license built by Canadair, the CT-133. And while Tim is turning around, I want to take this opportunity to again say thank you to Mojave Communications, to Inglis Classics and Hot Rod Hotties here at the car show, General Atomics, our thanks to Hit Plumbing, to CMEX, San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, and our thanks also to Global Credit Union, some of the many contributing partners that have come together for the 2024 Apple Valley Airshow and Napa Auto Parts Car Show. Not only that, but they continue to add to the success of this airshow in the future. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the smoke is on. From your airshow right, the first of our opening maneuvers today, Tim Tebow in the CT-133 Ace Maker Air Shows. Tim started flying air shows when he was, or flying gliders rather, when he was 15 years old, and held his pilocy certificate with the pre-modest driver's license. He started flying in Trebon, Germany, which was right next to Hahn Air Force Base, and he was in a flying club that incidentally, during the 1950s, had the notoriety of having General Chuck Yeager be a member of that particular flying club as well. The airplane that Tim is flying is the license built by Canadair CT-133, originally the Lockheed T-33 trainer. This aircraft is the type of training aircraft that in the late 1940s and early 1950s introduced America's first generation of jet pilots to jet flight training. As Tim takes the airplane up into the vertical, quarter rolls and shows you the beautiful performance of this aircraft in the vertical maneuver. This aircraft came about as a result of an order in June of 1943 from General Hap Arnold to Lockheed Aircraft to begin the design and development of a jet trainer. Now, World War II was going on, and all of the predominant aircraft at that time were piston engine airplanes. But jet and rocket-powered aircraft had begun to fly long before the beginning of World War II. It wasn't until 1943, though, that the Army Air Corps decided to take serious interest. They approached Lockheed to approve the construction of a prototype design which would become known as the XP-80, and it was nicknamed Lulabelle. Now, at that time, resources were so tight because production of war products was of paramount importance that Lulabelle was built in a temporary structure that was constructed from packing crates. Packing crates were used to build a shelter in 10 days in order to build this jet aircraft. An entire machine shop was purchased and moved out into the desert so that all of the engineers had the tools they needed to construct the prototype aircraft. At that particular time, the XP-80, which was a single-seat jet fighter, was going to be powered by a British engine, a jet engine manufactured by the de Havilland Corporation, but the engines were not available. So General Electric proposed to Lockheed an engine design that resulted in the fuselage of the aircraft having to be redesigned in order to accommodate the slightly larger airframe, so the air engine rather, so Lockheed had to build an entirely new airframe. With Tony LeVere at the controls, the famed test pilot for Lockheed aircraft, the XD-80 first flew June the 10th of 1944. With the General Electric engine powering the aircraft, which provided more thrust, almost 1,600 pounds of thrust, and a brand new paint job, this aircraft flew at a staggering speed of 561 miles per hour. 4 aircraft were constructed with the hopes that they would be able to be flown in the European theater of operation. 2 of the XD-80s went to England, however, neither of them were able to fly in combat. One was destroyed on the ground, and the other was not capable of performing. 2 aircraft were sent by the Army Air Corps to Italy. Both of them saw action, but unfortunately, neither of them were able to engage in combat with what was flying then for the Germans, the Me-262 jet fighter. So it wasn't until 1948 when the T-33, the 2-seat version of this aircraft, first took to the air, the fighter pilots could begin training in this airplane in order to take it into combat. On November the 8th, 1950, the first jet versus jet aerial combat took place, and that was between a P-80 Shooting Star and a North Korean MiG-17. This took place in the area in northwest Korea that would later become known as MiG Alley. And several days prior to that fateful flight, the MiG-15s had encountered a formation of North American F-51s, as the T-51 was known in Korea. It was a piston engine fighter really unable to engage with the jet. This gave the North Korean pilots the idea that they had the upper hand. A few days later, the MiG-15 engaged with the Lockheed P-80 Shooting Star. The Shooting Star destroyed the 15 and attained the first jet-to-jet aerial victory in the history of jet aerial warfare and in the Korean War. As Tim Tebow furthered his aviation career, he took a little detour and began flying skydivers for a few years as he was building flying time to go to work for the airlines. He did, in fact, get into the airlines and flew Boeing 737s for Lufthansa for 24 years, and then shortly after that got into aerobatics. He participated in numerous competitions from 2004 to 2017, flying aerobatic aircraft, beginning with sportsmen and working his way up into the unlimited level of competition. In 2011, Tim had the opportunity to meet Greg Collier. Greg is the innovator of Acemaker Airshows, who first introduced the T-33 to the airshow circuit here on the West Coast. Tim and Greg became friends, and Tim got type rated in the T-33, began building up time in the T-Bird over the next few years. While flying for Lufthansa, he had layovers here in the United States. He would go up and visit Greg, practice in the T-Bird. He would wind up getting his International Council of Air Shows flying card, as well as his Screen Actors Guild card in 2017. It was shortly after that he flew his first air show in the T-Bird for Greg and Acemaker Airshows. Now, besides flying air shows in the T, beautiful jet through its paces for you here this afternoon. You're going to see some very unique features on this airplane that have made it one of the most feared and respected fighter aircraft of its day, and in the modern era, one of the most exciting jet aircraft to watch on the circuit. Jason Soames and the MiG-17. Jason is type rated in 17 different types of aircraft, including the Supermarine Spitfire, the North American P-51 Mustang, and the Gulfstream G650. He is a corporate pilot by trade, but he is also part of the Southern California wing of the Commemorative Air Force, based in Camarillo, California. He is one of the chief pilots there, responsible for flying and maintaining all of their aircraft on the airshow circuit. From your air show right in his first pass here today, Jason and the MiG-17. One of the most obvious features of the aircraft, as you notice when Jason made his first pass here today, is the sweep back of the wings, 35 degrees of sweep. So coming into the late 1940s and early 1950s, with jet aircraft taking to the air and replacing distant engine airplanes, speeds were increasing. Now we're hitting 500 and 600 miles per hour. With those speeds, a straight wing was not working. So the sweepback was something that began to evolve in the latter days of World War II. The sweep of the wing rearward enabled the aircraft to fly at faster speeds and still have controllability with the ailerons. Coming in from your left in a very low pass, Jason will demonstrate the beautiful lines of the aircraft as he pulls the nose of the 17 up and turns around at air show right. Again, giving you an opportunity to see that sweep. The first of these jet aircraft was the MiG-17, but prior to that, in World War II, MiG aircraft were represented by piston engine fighter aircraft, was represented the Russian Air Forces of the Second World War. Now, MiG stands for the initials of the two engineers who designed and built these aircraft, Artun Mikoyan and Mikhail Gurevich. That is where the M and the G come from. Getting into jet development, they had the benefit of taking advantage of German technology. Again, the airplane is capable of supersonic speeds, the first of the supersonic and afterburning jet aircraft in the MiG category. This aircraft proved so popular that throughout the 1940s, or the 1950s rather, into the 1960s and 70s, it was not only built in Russia, but also licensed built in China and Poland. And for many air forces well into the latter part of the last century, this aircraft was a frontline fighter. Many jet aircraft came after it, some better, some not so good. However, the MiG-17 continued to fly around the world in armed forces well into the end of the last century. Quite a tribute to a design that dates back to the 1940s. As Jason demonstrates for you now, the beautiful maneuverability of the aircraft in a graceful aileron roll. Jason also holds a surface level waiver, which basically means that he can fly any aircraft that he is type rated in as close to the ground as he dares. Now, in order to get a waiver to fly aerobatics, the pilot has to demonstrate their proficiency beginning with the bottom of their maneuvers at 800 feet, and they're allowed to come down to 500, down to 200, and eventually to a surface waiver. Jason is a well-known airshow pilot, also a racing pilot, having raced in the biplane class at Reno, as well as a Warbird pilot for, again, the commemorative Air Force Southern California wing. From the right, Jason and the MiG-17, one more pass. Again in full afterburner, showing you the incredible vertical performance now of the aircraft. So keep in mind that you're engaging an aircraft in 1950, the early 1950s. It has two 7.6 millimeter cannon and a 20 millimeter cannon in the nose. And you're flying an F-86 Saberjet with 650 caliber machine guns. The edge is going to be determined by the pilot who utilizes the capabilities of their aircraft better than the opposing pilot. The MiG presented a very unique challenge to pilots of the American Army, Air Force, and Naval Forces. It was during this time frame, during the Korean War theater of operation, that an organization that we now know as Top Gun was first theorized. Our pilots were getting shot down at a frightening rate because these aircraft that they were facing, aircraft like the MiG-17, were incredibly capable of deadly aircraft as an enemy airplane. It's interesting now that all these years later, we're watching an aircraft that was an enemy aircraft, but that's entertaining you at an air show. And one of the fun features about this aircraft, though we're calling it a MiG-17, is actually a license-built LIM 5. It's manufactured by a company in Poland, one of the licensed builders. So this airplane is actually a Polish-built LIM 5, but its official designation is a MiG-17. From the right, again in full afterburner, Jason in a high-speed pass.